An innocent child endures horrific, repeated abuse for 2 years, and her dad gets to go back to his Delaware mansion. In explaining her slap on the wrist, the judge says she's worried the defendant, quote, will not fare well behind bars. Who the hell fares well behind bars? Where's the concern for the children? One little girl and allegedly her baby brother as well, possibly sexually assaulted by their dad. And this judge, Jan Jordan, take a look at her. We're going to show you her picture. She says that the rich man will not fare well in prison, so he gets probation. John Lieberman, what do you know?
Well, here's what I know, Jane. Number one, prosecutors apparently were forced to make a deal with the devil. Here's what I know. They didn't want to re-victimize this little girl again. They weren't going to put her on the stand in the case, so they cut this plea deal. That was step one. In the plea deal, however, it gave the judge a lot of latitude. There was no mandatory minimum sentence that she had to give, but the sentencing guidelines, we have learned, recommended 30 months in prison for this sex offender. He admitted to the molestation as part of the plea deal. That being said, he didn't get 30 months. He got a slap on the wrist, as you just alluded to.
Now,
sex offenders get that every day, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, but people who do nonviolent drug offenses get decades behind bars. What a country. We reached out to the Delaware court that imposed this sentence, and they can't comment because the case is still open since Richards is currently, yes, as we all know, on probation. Originally, Judge Jordan gave him 8 years and then said, never mind, we're just going to suspend that entire sentence unless you violate your probation because you won't fare well in jail. What about the prosecutors? Did they drop the ball too? Should they have offered this weak plea deal that carries no mandatory minimum? Eugene Maurer, you're our special guest tonight. You used to be the attorney for the defendant, this DuPont heir. How do you defend this? This is a very, very awful crime. Sexually assaulting your own daughter. How can you defend no jail time?
Well, good evening. How are you? Well, I think in this case it's very defensible, and I think people aren't being real fair to Judge Jordan. She's not the easiest judge in the world. The prosecutor in this case made a decision, as you already mentioned, not to re-victimize the child and force them to testify during the course of the trial. Judge Jordan was presented with a tremendous amount of mitigating information about Mr. Richards and his background and his shortcomings and his problems. And although she gave him probation, she put a tremendous amount of conditions on him, which I would note have not been violated.
Look, I'm sorry, but the fact that he's on the sex registry, who checks the sex registry? This man, nobody knows. Nobody knew that this guy was on probation for this heinous crime because this case was really never out there. Why? Because, well, the authorities say that they don't issue press releases on cases like this. How do we find out about all the other cases? The idea, Eric Schwartzreich, criminal defense attorney, that well, he's on probation, and this is a tough judge, and we didn't want to re-victimize the children. You know what I'm worried about? Victimizing other children.
Jane, first of all, being on the registered sex offender list, that is a punishment. While this is a heinous crime, once you're on that registered sex offender list, most times you're living underneath a bridge. As a criminal defense attorney,
no, not if you're living in a mansion. Not if you're living in a mansion.
You might be living in a mansion, but that mansion, if it's near a school or there's certain restrictions, he might not be living in a mansion.
Near a school.
Jane,
look at the lawn. It's not near anything. It's a mansion.
As a criminal defense attorney, justice is defined as what the best ruling that you get in your favor sometimes, and they'll call it the halls of justice because it doesn't always happen in the courtroom.
Somebody help me out.
Mo. But, Jane, it's not one size fits all. We don't know if it's competency. We don't know the statement. There's a lot of factors that could have gone.
Hold on.
Okay, there's only one factor to consider here.
But we can't judge this by one size fits all.
Listen,
and prosecutors have reasons for making offers.
Okay, you've said your part. Now, Mo.
Jane, there's one factor to consider greatly here. He was molesting his 3-year-old daughter and his son. This is, like you said, a classic case of power and privilege. And I would love to look into the judge's background and see if she's ever gotten contributions from the DuPont family and all of that.
Because
that would really give us.
Hold on a second. One at a time, people.
You have to know the strength of their case.
This happens all the time.